What about Dumbledore, Hagrid? Said Harry.
He's done more than enough for me already, groaned Hagrid. Got enough on his plate in keeping them Dementors out of the castle, and Sirius Black lurking around.
Ron and Hermione looked quickly at Harry, as though expecting him to start berating Hagrid for not telling him the truth about Black. But Harry couldn't bring himself to do it now. Not now that he saw Hagrid so miserable and scared. Listen, Hagrid, he said. You can't give up. Hermione's right. You just need a good defense. You can call us as witnesses. I'm sure I've read about a case of hippogriff baiting, said Hermione thoughtfully, where the hippogriff got off. I'll look it up for you, Hagrid, and see exactly what happened. Hagrid howled still more loudly. Harry and Hermione looked at Ron to help them too. Shall I make a cup of tea? He said. It's what my mum does whenever someone's upset, Ron muttered, shrugging. At last, after many more assurances of help, with a steaming mug of tea in front of him, Hagrid blew his nose on a handkerchief the size of a tablecloth and said, You're right. I can't afford to go to pieces. Gotta pull myself together. Fang the boarhound came timidly out from under the table and laid his head on Hagrid's knee. I've not been myself lately, said Hagrid, stroking Fang with one hand and mopping his face with the other. Worried about Buckbeak, and no one like him in classes. We do like them, lied Hermione at once. Yeah, they're great, said Ron, crossing his fingers under the table. How are the flubberworms? Dead, said Hagrid gloomily. Too much lettuce. Oh, no, said Ron, his lip twitching. And them Dementors make me feel ruddy terrible and all, said Hagrid with a sudden shudder. Gotta walk past them every time I want to drink in the 3 broomsticks. It's like being back in Azkaban. He fell silent, gulping his tea. Ron, Harry, and Hermione watched him breathlessly. They had never heard Hagrid talk about his brief spell in Azkaban before. After a pause, Hermione said timidly, Is it awful in there, Hagrid? You've no idea, said Hagrid quietly. Never been anywhere like it. Thought I was going mad. Kept going over and over horrible stuff in my mind. The day I got expelled from Hogwarts. The day me dad died. The day I had to let go of Norbert. His eyes filled with tears. Norbert was the baby dragon Hagrid had once won in a game of cards. You can't really remember who you are after a while, and you can't see the point of living at all. I used to hope I'd just die in my sleep. When they let me out, it was like being born again. Everything came flooding back, and it was the best feeling in the world. Mind the Dementors weren't keen on letting me go, though. But you were innocent, said Hermione. Hagrid snorted. Think that matters to them? They don't care as long as they've got a couple of 100 humans stuck there with them, so they can leech all the happiness out of them. They don't even give a damn who's guilty and who's not. Hagrid went quiet for a moment, staring into his tea. Then he said quietly, Thought of just letting Buckbeak go. Trying to make him fly away, but how do you explain to a hippogriff it's got to go into hiding? And I'm scared of breaking the law. He looked up at them, tears leaking down his face again. I don't ever want to go back to Azkaban. The trip to Hagrid's, though far from fun, had nevertheless had the effect Ron and Hermione had hoped. Though Harry had by no means forgotten about Black, he couldn't brood constantly on revenge if he wanted to help Hagrid win his case against the Committee for the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures. He, Ron, and Hermione went to the library the next day and returned to the empty common room laden with books that might help prepare a defense for Buckbeak. The 3 of them sat in front of a roaring fire, slowly turning pages and pages of dusty volumes about famous cases of marauding beasts, speaking occasionally when they ran across something relevant. Here's something. There was a case in 1722, but the hippogriff was convicted. Oh, look what they did to it. That's disgusting. This might help. Look, a manticore savaged someone in 1296. And they let the manticore off. Oh, no, that was only because everyone was too scared to go near it. Meanwhile, in the rest of the castle, the usual magnificent Christmas decorations had been put up, despite the fact that hardly any of the students remained to enjoy them. Thick streamers of holly and mistletoe were strung along the corridors. Mysterious lights shone from inside every suit of armor, and the great hall was filled with its usual 12 Christmas trees, glittering with golden stars. A powerful and delicious smell of cooking pervaded the corridors, and by Christmas Eve it had grown so strong that even Scabbers poked his nose out of the shelter of Ron's pocket to sniff hopefully at the air. On Christmas morning, Harry was woken by Ron throwing his pillow at him. "Oi! Presents!" Harry reached for his glasses and put them on, squinting through the semi-darkness to the foot of his bed, where a small heap of parcels had appeared. Ron was already ripping the paper off his own presents. "Another sweater from Mum. Maroon again. See if you've got one." Harry had. Mrs. Weasley had sent him a scarlet sweater with the Gryffindor lion knitted on the front. Also a dozen of home-baked mince pies, some Christmas cake, and a box of nut brittle. As he moved all these things aside, he saw a long, thin package lying underneath. "What's that?" said Ron, looking over, a freshly unwrapped pair of maroon socks in his hand. "Dunno." Harry ripped the parcel open and gasped as a magnificent gleaming broomstick rolled out onto his bedspread. Ron dropped his socks and jumped off his bed for a closer look. "I don't believe it," he said hoarsely. It was a firebolt, identical to the dream broom Harry had gone to see every day in Diagon Alley. Its handle glittered as he picked it up. He could feel it vibrating and let go. It hung in midair, unsupported, at exactly the right height for him to mount it. His eyes moved from the golden registration number at the top of the handle right down to the perfectly smooth, streamlined birch twigs that made up its tail. "Who sent it to you?" said Ron in a hushed voice. "Look and see if there's a card," said Harry. Ron ripped apart the firebolt's wrappings. "Nothing. Blimey, who'd spend that much on you?" "Well," said Harry, feeling stunned, "I'm betting it wasn't the Dursleys." "I bet it was Dumbledore," said Ron, now walking around the firebolt, taking in every glorious inch. "He sent you the invisibility cloak anonymously." "That was my dad's, though," said Harry. "Dumbledore was just passing it on to me. He wouldn't spend hundreds of galleons on me. He can't go giving students stuff like this." That's why he wouldn't say it was from him," said Ron. "In case some git like Malfoy said it was favoritism. Hey, Harry." Ron gave him a great woof of laughter. "Malfoy! Wait till he sees you on this. He'll be sick as a pig. This is an international standard broom, it is." "I can't believe this," Harry muttered, running his hand along the firebolt, while Ron sank into Harry's bed, laughing his head off at the thought of Malfoy. "I know," said Ron, controlling himself. I know who it could have been. Lupin." "What?" said Harry, now starting to laugh himself. "Lupin? Listen, if he had this much gold, he'd be able to buy himself some new robes." "Yeah, but he likes you," said Ron. "He was away when your Nimbus got smashed, and he might have heard about it and decided to visit Diagon Alley and get this one for you." "What do you mean, he was away?" said Harry. "He was ill when I was playing in the match." "Well, he wasn't in the hospital ring," said Ron. "I was there, cleaning up the bedpans on detention from Snape, remember?" "Well, he wasn't in the hospital wing," said Ron. "I was there, cleaning out the deadpans on that detention from Snape, remember?" Harry frowned at Ron. "I can't see Lupin affording something like this." "What are you two laughing about?" Hermione had just come in wearing a dressing gown and carrying Crookshanks, who was looking very grumpy, with a string of tinsel tied around his neck. "Don't bring him in here," said Ron, hurriedly snatching Scabbers from the depths of his bed and stowing him in his pajama pocket. But Hermione wasn't listening. She dropped Crookshanks onto Seamus's empty bed and stared open-mouthed at the firebolt. "Oh, Harry! Who sent you that?" "No idea," said Harry. "There wasn't a card or anything with it." To his surprise, Hermione did not appear either excited or intrigued by this news. On the contrary, her face fell, and she bit her lip. "What's the matter with you?" said Ron. I don't know, she said slowly, but it's a bit odd, isn't it? I mean, this is supposed to be quite a good broom, isn't it? Ron sighed exasperatedly. It's the best broom there is, Hermione, he said. So it must have been really expensive. Probably cost more than all the Slytherin's brooms put together, said Ron happily. Well, who'd send Harry something as expensive as that and not even tell him they'd sent it, said Hermione. Who cares, said Ron impatiently. Listen, Harry, can I have a go on it? Can I? I don't think anyone should ride that broom just yet, said Hermione shrilly. Harry and Ron looked at her. What do you think Harry's going to do with it? Sweep the floor? Ron said. But before Hermione could answer, Crookshanks sprang from Seamus's bed right at Ron's chest. Get him out of here! Ron bellowed as Crookshanks' claws ripped at his pajamas, and Scabbers attempted a wild escape over his shoulder. Ron seized Scabbers by the tail and aimed a misjudged kick at Crookshanks that hit the trunk at the end of Harry's bed, knocking it over and causing Ron to hop up and down, howling in pain. Crookshanks' fur suddenly stood on end. A shrill, tiny whistling had filled the room. The pocket sneakoscope had become dislodged from Uncle Vernon's old socks and was whirling and gleaming on the floor. I forgot about that, said Harry, bending down and picking up the sneakoscope. I never wear those socks if I can help it. The sneakoscope whirled and whistled in his palm. Crookshanks was hissing and spitting at it. You'd better take that cat out of here, Hermione, said Ron furiously, sitting on Harry's bed, nursing his toe. Can't you shut that thing up? He added to Harry as Hermione strode out of the room. Crookshanks's yellow eyes still fixed maliciously on Ron.